Now, the fourth kingdom in the 5 kingdom classification is of the plants. Okay. Now, the organisms which would be classified in kingdom Plantae would be those which will have the characteristic cellular composition that of a plant cell. The plant cell is having a cellulosic cell wall, it is having vacuole present in it, it is having the plastids present in it, which we discussed about in the plant cells and plant tissues, of course. Now, we have to deal with the gross characteristics, and in the classification we have to see the classification criteria on basis of which the kingdom Plantae has been divided into further classes. Okay. Now, when I say further classes, the basis of classification in the lower class of classification or the taxon would be such that whether the body is differentiated into a well defined composition of tissues or organs, or if it is just normal thallus. So, for that we have the thalloid condition, where the body is not differentiated into proper organs, it is just loose mass of tissues. Apart from that, when we go to higher classification classes or taxons, we have the level or the criteria of classification being whether there are tissues which are present and what type of tissues are present through which the conduction of food and water takes place. Please keep in mind that the lower level of classification lies whether the body is being differentiated, well differentiated into tissues and organs, and at the higher stages the level of classification is identified on the basis of which tissue is responsible for the conduction of water and food through the plant organs. Okay. Now, we are going to see one by one which all classes or divisions, we use the term division in kingdom Plantae, are present in this particular kingdom through a slide show. And what you see over here is that the first division in the Plantae is division Thallophyta. Now, Thallophyta, phyta would be the word that would be used for phytes, which is used for plants. Now, when I say Thallophyta, I had mentioned a word thalloid body, thallus, the condition where the body is not differentiated into organs, it is just aggregate of tissues. Now, in this group, the plants do not have well differentiated body parts. The plants are called algae. They are mostly aquatic, and the example lies to be Spirogyra, Eulothrix, Cladophora, Cara, etc. As you can see, these are green plants. Often they are microscopic, they are algae, they are water dwelling, they are aquatic, and you know there are 3 types of algae which you will get introduced to in your higher classes. So, we have Thallophyta, which has mostly aquatic organisms called algae, and the body is not well differentiated into different body parts. Moving further, we have Bryophyta. Now, the bryophytes, otherwise known as the plants of kingdom Bryophyta, division Bryophyta, not kingdom, they are called the amphibians of plant kingdom. First thing that you need to pay attention towards is that they are called the amphibians of plant kingdom, which means that they would need water. Now, what is amphibians? Amphibian is something which needs both water and terrestrial condition. Amphi means dual, okay, and in the case of amphibians, we say that those biological forms which have dual surviving condition, that means they need terrestrial environment as well as they need the aquatic environment. And in the case of amphibians, you have to remember that those organisms which require aquatic environment for their reproduction, they are known as amphibians. So, because the previous one was totally aquatic, they are becoming terrestrial. They would be present in moist areas, and they would require water for their sexual reproduction. Now, let us see their characteristics. In this group, the plant body is differentiated into stem and leaf-like structures, not leaf. Please pay attention, it is stem and leaf-like. Somehow the body is thalloid over here also. They are stem and leaf-like, but they are not particularly stem and leaf. We cannot say them to be organs. So, they are both Thallophyta and Bryophyta, they are thalloid. This is not completely thalloid, but yeah, it is somewhat thalloid, but there are no specialized structures for conduction of water And means we said that in higher plants we are going to make the tissue responsible for conduction of water as the classification criteria. We do not have that specialized structure over here, and other substances from one part of the plant body to the other, that is a sentence completion basically. What you have to remember is that they are the amphibians of the plant kingdom. You have the example of mosses and liverworts. You have the example of Marchantia that you often see growing in moist places. You have the example of Riccia, that is again a bryophyte. The mosses that grow on the moist places in the rainy seasons, they are bryophytes. Now moving further, third one is pteridophyte. Now when we come to pteridophyta, in this particular group you are going to find some primitive tissues which are responsible for conduction, and the pteridophytes include the ferns, which are importantly garden ornamental plants. You must have seen in most of the houses the garden is very well adorned with many ferns, and they look like this. These are the ferns basically. There is example of ferns that is given and Marsilia that is given. In this group the plant body is differentiated into roots, stem and leaves. The plant body is differentiated now it is no more thalloid, if incomplete or completely, but yeah, it has new organs, and that is a sign of advancement. Has vascular tissues for conducting water and other substances. Now these tissues are not highly specialized, but yeah, they are present. So we are moving further, we are advancing in the hierarchy of plant kingdom. These vascular tissues are for conducting water and other substances from one part of the plant body to the other, and the example is ferns and Marsilia. Now moving further, we have angiosperms and gymnosperms. Previously in the three divisions that we talked about, we never mentioned a seed or a flower, nothing was mentioned. When we are going to talk about gymnosperms, this word sperms refers to seeds. So we have two types of plant classifications. One is gymnosperms and the other is angiosperms. You see the flowering plants, they are all angiosperms. You see these pine and rest of these I would say conifers, they belong to gymnosperm category. Now let's talk about gymnosperms. You know, the word gymnosperms itself is indicative. How? Gymno means naked, and sperm, as I told you, it refers to seed. Okay, so the plants which have naked seeds, now by naked seeds it doesn't mean that the seeds are supposed to wear some clothes. By naked seeds I mean that it is not covered by a fruit. Okay, and we have the example of gymnosperms. As you can see, the Christmas tree that you often decorate in the time of Christmas, that is a gymnosperm. There are various pines which are gymnosperms. This cedrus is a gymnosperm. Many conifers are gymnosperms, and what you see over here is that the seeds that are formed on these, they are situated or located inside the cones. There is no fruit basically, there are cones which are condensed leaves itself, the seeds would be found inside them. That is in the case of gymnosperms. This is all you have to remember, that they bear seeds. Now that they are bearing seeds, they would have a highly specialized body, they would have different organs, leaves, stem, there would be vascular tissue as was seen in the pteridophytes, despite the fact that over here there would be the vascular tissue highly advanced. Now moving further, the last is angiosperms, the plants which have flowers. Okay, the abundantly beautiful nature is having so many flowering plants, and they are a good sight to see. They produce fruits, many of them they produce fruits. So you are not going to find naked seeds inside the cones, you are going to find the seeds inside an ovary which could form a fruit at some stage. The plant is going to have the flowers and they are very abundant. Because we are studying about the classification, so these angiosperms are further classified into two categories. One is monocot and the other one is dicot. Now what is the difference between two? You see, because a seed would be formed, how that seed is going to be formed, what is the composition of that seed in terms of cotyledons. You have seen a gram seed, it breaks down into two parts, right? And you must have seen a wheat grain, it does not divide into two, because the wheat grain is having a single cotyledon, and the pea, or I am saying that the other grain which I was talking about, gram seed, that is going to have 2 cotyledons. So, that is one point of difference between the angiosperms. There is 1 cotyledon in the seed in case of monocots, and there are 2 cotyledons in the seed in the case of dicots. Take the example of maize seed over here, take the example of kidney beans over here. They have 2 different cotyledons. Now, talking about their flowers are in such shape, in the 3s or its multiples, and in this case the flowers could be 4s or 5s. You can just skip this point, just pictorially if you can remember, this is the difference between the monocot and dicot flower. Then the vascular bundles for the conduction of water and other food material, they are scattered in the stem, and in the case of dicot they are in a ring pattern, they are not scattered just like that. In this case you can take the example of watermelon where you find the seed scattered randomly, and in this case the vascular bundles are forming a ring pattern. Okay, and the last one is that you would find parallel leaf veins. Now, supposedly if you have seen the banana leaf, okay, banana leaf is something like this, straight. This is the how banana leaves look like. Banana leaf looks like there are veins which are present, and the veins are parallel to each other. But if you see the leaf of a mango tree, it is having a net sort of pattern. There is no parallel veins which are present. So, this is the clear cut point of difference between the monocots and dicots, and with this we are completed with the understanding of kingdom plantae. All you have to keep in mind is that what are the points of differences, and you have to learn the examples by heart.